Got it. And then shall I do the same?
Uh-huh. Yeah, we can record from both sides.
Right.
That way you can do whatever you want to with the footage.
Thank you. Good idea. So it's good to see you.
Oh my gosh, it seems like it's been ages. It has been ages.
It has been ages. And
World.
I know, so much has happened. We've been meaning to like
global catastrophe between when I saw you last and now.
Yeah. Do you that was another thing I wanted to ask you actually. Do you have thoughts on that? Do you have opinions on what's going on? Theories? Overall feelings? I'm very curious to hear.
I would stick with feelings. Yes, although all of that is present, I just try to veer away from anything political, and this has all gotten so political, so sadly, that you're sort of not even allowed to be who you are anymore all of a sudden.
Yeah.
So as you know, I'm not allopathic. I never have been. I'm naturopathic. So the naturopathic view says reality is from the inside out. And the theory it employs is terrain theory. So it's look to the inside of your biology and being and make it fit, and then interact with your environment. And, that's how I've lived my whole life.
Can I ask you a question about that actually? Because it's funny, I was talking to my partner about this and I said, what if the universe is literally a extension and an amplification of absolutely everything that's going on within you? And it's a difficult theory to propose, because you're basically saying that all the things that are terrible that are going on are somehow a reflection of something in you. But I was saying, you might have a tiny little issue with something, and what you're seeing in the world might be a humongous magnification of that tiny little issue. But what a perfect universe you would be put in if everything around you was somehow showing you a mirror in a massive way to all the little things that are going on in you, and hence the universe, you inverse. Is that your take on it?
Well, yes. One consciousness, one is all there is, one being everyone and everything. And so of course that one, as experienced through each and every one of us, is the reality, and the world that we see all around us is the world mirror. It's a projection. And we know this, right? We go out of body. We've watched it happen as we shift from here to quote there.
Yeah.
So, of course, that's embedded in me at this point. Yeah. So, I work with the dream state, and my inner being was telling me or giving me the symbols, the signs for what was coming when the whole thing began a couple years ago. And I don't say the words because I don't feed it. So in any way, shape, or form. So yes, I was being given the symbols that something was coming up, and back dream intel every day.
Wow.
I had been given the idea, let's say, to begin a consciousness study, and the title was given to me, 365 Days of Dreams. Okay, let's see if we can bring back dream data every day. And I did that for a year, and it was ridiculously easy. And after that year, I opened it up for other people to join in on this. And so I've been doing that ever since. And when you bring back data every day, it's just like going out of body every day. I mean, you have a more natural balance in your consciousness, in your psyche, because your experience isn't solely here.
Right. Yeah. And when you say you were doing it with other people, was it that you were presenting the data somewhere and letting other people add to it, or? How was that working?
Yeah, on the forum board. Our group has the forum board. So I just opened it up as a consciousness experiment on the forum board, and everybody was welcome to join. Very few did, or people would trickle in and then leave. But it's been there ever since, to give people the impetus to begin to open themselves to the rest of themselves. And a large part of that is bringing back what we call dreams, which, as we know, are synonymous with reality.
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
reality isn't just here. That was like one of the very first things that's interesting. This is interesting. This is one of the very first things when I started going out of body, my own inner being wanted me to see. That when I woke up to start my day, I was still dreaming. And they wanted me to see they wanted me to level the playing field. So when I went into the additional fields, I was, quote, dreaming. But when I got here to this one in this field, I was also dreaming. And then also, this is reality. And when I shift into those other fields, I'm also in reality. So they wanted me to level that playing field. And when you level the playing field, it opens you up to the entirety of the playing field, which is, of course, a whole lot larger than just here, which is locked down, as we know, in a beta hertz frequency we call beta. And now we get into the brainwave bandwidths.
Well, you should say that. I've been playing with this little brainwave. Hard to see with this thing going on in the background, but there you go. I've been measuring my brainwaves.
Oh, nice. What is that?
It's a Muse headband that does exactly that. It measures the different frequencies of your brain. But we can get onto that in a little bit. I just want to ask you some more about that. Did you so two things. Did you notice coherence amongst what people were reporting in their dreams?
Well, everybody has a very unique way of dreaming. And the fields are many. So we'll always have this inclination or aptitude for bringing back data from the field that, we most adore. So people who really adore physical life generally tend to bring back day residue, and the things that they work out.
Yeah.
When they go into the fields. And, so not at the beginning. However, one of the points of opening it up to the group was to begin to look for crossover in the symbols we were receiving in the dreams. So regardless of what field we brought them back from, I might have mentioned a blue ball and somebody else may have mentioned a blue ball. So we look for that data crossover that tells us that a larger consciousness is reaching into our fields and putting a similar symbol there to get our attention.
Yeah, got it.
Yeah, things like that. We were really interested in things like that. And there are occasionally people, Jan Sandal, it's amazing how much I was able to connect with him and get, similar crossover. And there's another fellow on the board that also likewise. Yeah. We're just open enough and to connect that we do.
Yeah.
So things like that begin happening. Sure.
Yeah. So I mean, I guess it's almost like, as you say, that we're part of one consciousness, but then we're each individual bits of it, I guess. Is that how you see it? Each with almost like a little holographic piece with the wholeness within us and us being a part of the wholeness. So, that is how we get unique perspectives and unique views, yet, are all connected as one. It's hard to articulate, but
it's easy to understand if we can just put it in simple terms. We live on one planet. Yes. But on that planet are many different countries, all on the same planet. And inside those countries, there are many more different states.
Yeah.
Inside the states, many different cities, right? Inside those cities, certain municipalities, all on the same planet. It's sort of easy to understand when you just think about it in local terms. And so, yes, the planet is everywhere on the planet all at once, whereas the city of San Diego has a parameter.
Yeah.
Right. And inside the city of San Diego are a whole bunch of other smaller parameters. We call it homes.
Mm. Yeah. I've always said it's like many cells in one body. We're all important. We're all needed. We all make the body. Not one is any more important than any other.
Same. Yeah.
But yeah.
Macrocosm, microcosm.
Yeah.
And the microcosm is a duplicate of the macrocosm, as above, so below. Yeah.
Yeah. And earlier you mentioned the that you were both, you would awake and realize that you're still dreaming, and then also be in waking reality at the same time. And I wondered if that was almost like a kind of quantum thing. What I've sort of learned is that concurrent states exist at once. So these kind of paradoxical ideas are usually bang on, yeah, we are both awake and asleep. We are both awake and dreaming, sorry. Let's put it that way. Is that how you see it, or would you have a kind of different view on that?
We are both awake and asleep.
Well, awake and dreaming, let's put it that way. So,
well, as you know, there's dreaming and then there's lucid dreaming. So there's dreaming, there's dreams in which you do not have the conscious recognition of the fact that you're dreaming, such as everybody here in physical space, mostly. Right?
Yeah.
Dreaming, but they don't know that they're dreaming.
Yeah.
They've created a difference, a divide between what they're going to see as reality and what they're going to see as dream.
Yeah.
So reality is something very different than dreaming. Just go up to anybody and ask them.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
And so waking up in the dream is lucid dreaming.
Yeah.
You know, and it can't just happen inside the fields when you lay down at night and go to what we call sleep. It can't just happen that way. It has to happen in this field also.
Yeah.
But the first step in lucid dreaming is realizing you're in a dream. And this is the hard part for most people, because that's what it is. It's not just waking up, it's waking up to the fact that you're dreaming.
Yeah, exactly.
And
I guess that
here in this field, this is the reason that wakes us up, is because if here in this field we're dreaming, then our person can't be the dreamer.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
That's why it's so important here, because that's how we start waking up to the larger order of reality.
Yeah.
Or larger inner being.
Yeah. I've always thought that the lucid dream is not only the perfect analogy, but is, is the way things are. This is a dream that we're not fully lucid in, basically.
No, we're not lucid at all.
Yeah. Yeah. It's interesting, actually, because yesterday we had a heat wave. I don't know if you saw on the news, and England reached temperatures of like 41 degrees. I don't know what that is in Fahrenheit, but for England, that's very, very hot.
106, something like that.
Yeah, and I was outside and I hadn't drunk much, and I was trying to explain something to someone, and I realized that my brain was working very slowly. And I very quickly said, my brain is working very slowly. I'm noticing that it's working slowly. It must be the heat, it's slowed it down. And he said, it's funny how you can so quickly observe that, as if there's one part that isn't affected, noticing, what's going on. And I've noticed this before. I've been almost in many states of consciousness, let's say, some of them drug induced. And I've noticed that there's a bit at the back, that watches the whole thing and isn't affected. It does not get touched at all. It's just there, noticing, being aware of whatever is going on in the field of perception. And
That's your inner being, what people call your higher self.
yeah,
The back body being what connects us to spirit, meaning what's behind us, what we can't see, right? Front
yeah,
body is what connects us to the world. And so you mentioned heat, and because I'm from the desert, I have a lot of experience with this. Yeah, the heat slows your brainwave frequencies. You know, you move out of beta. It's really hard to move in beta in heat like that, isn't it? The brainwaves shift into those alpha frequencies.
right. That's funny. I did log that. I was talking to someone and I had the band on, and I said my alpha's gone up to over, it was like 125, and normally it sits, you know, around 190. I was like, what's going on? Am I very, very awake? Or, you know, I didn't really know what it meant, but that makes sense.
And then the alphas, this is interesting. And the alphas, when they happen and you're here in our 3D physical space, you begin to see through the veil. You begin to, what people call hallucinate.
And the alphas are high.
But you're just, well, the alphas are an entire different realm. The alphas are the astral. Beta are physical spaces, 3D physical spaces. The astral, 654D, is galactic space. It's not what most people think it is.
Explain that.
There's a lot of lucid dreamers and astral projectors, you know, tend to go into the personal, private area, even
Absolutely.
while they're there, because that area is still there, you know, in the early astrals and the early alpha states.
Right, that's interesting.
But when you wake up to the larger order, you're not in planetary existence anymore. You're in a galactic level existence. And there are the beings from the other planets, the other systems. So when you start having the ET contact and things like that, that's when you know that you're in galactic space.
Right. And you can, would you say that you can get into these spaces by adjusting your brainwave frequencies, essentially?
Yes, that's how our interpretation of them here in our physical spaces through those brainwave frequencies.
Yeah. I'm dying to ask you about healing. I've yeah, there's some things that I've, you know, managed to heal in life, and others that have been incredibly stubborn and hard. And you know, I experiment with trying to get into different brain states to heal those things, and different methods of doing it. I've healed some things with lucid dreaming with really great success.
Yeah,
I've healed some things going out of body. Again, that's been with varying success, but I just wonder if you have any like ideas or tips on that, or if it's something you've experimented with.
Have I experimented with healing something that is happening in my physical space via the OBE?
Yeah.
That's all the OBE has been for me.
Wow. Okay. In a very physical way, or in a psychological?
Well, we're healing so much here in our current physical incarnations because we are in the cycles. All of the lifetimes we have ever lived, we have the opportunity to complete with here in this lifetime. And so I tend to use the word complete rather than heal.
Right. That's a nice way of looking.
It makes more sense to me that I'm completing with something. I'm coming into a fuller, complete understanding and manifesting that, actualizing that in my life. Yes, and that is what we generally call healing. However, because nothing is ever broken.
Nice.
We just haven't completed. We haven't, life is a process. You know, it's a 1 foot in front of the other deal.
Yeah.
So we just haven't gotten there yet. It's not that something is broken or needs healing. It's just that we haven't completed with the experience yet.
It's disease, isn't it? A disease of the mind that needs to
Well, what a lot of people experience is their own mental framework. And well, that's all we all experience is our own mental framework.
Yeah.
So if we get into the mindset that something's wrong, that there's something happening that we need to fix, then yes, life in the world mirror is going to give us that something.
Yeah. Yeah.
That needs to be fixed. Yeah. And in that process, we're doing the only thing we're ever doing, which is learning who we are, learning what consciousness is. Yeah.
Yeah. Some things are tough and persistent.
Reality is and how reality really works. Yeah.
Yeah. And these ET beings that you connect with, is that something that you choose to do? Like you decide that you want to do that and you get information from them? I know you obviously connect with the crystal beings.
Well, in the same way that in that beta frequency bandwidth here on the Earth planet, we are who we are and we look like what we do. And we have this species that we identify ourselves with called human. But we're not only here, right?
Yeah. We have a perception happening here.
In those other places, we look like what we do. And we have the species that we identify that who with, which is just what it is. Now we call that extraterrestrial, but it's just what I call the rest of myself.
Right. Different parts of yourself.
And so, yes, when you begin to graduate 3D and go out into your own larger consciousness, you come into contact with the rest of that. Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Not all at once, of course. It's challenging enough to do just in itself, but we begin to glean life elsewhere. And remember, there's just the one consciousness.
Yeah. Do you ever feel like that you don't want to be in a hurry to get back to that awareness, that full awareness of one consciousness, and that actually you're quite enjoying the whole duality experience?
That's a huge question. That's a huge bucket of worms. We could go almost anywhere with that.
Go for it.
No, I want that more than anything else, of course, because anything less, you see, there's a duality experience in which you realize it's a duality experience. You realize your consciousness and you're having a duality experience. And then there's duality experiences where you don't realize there's anything else. And, that's a lockdown. That's it's interesting, the concepts that came to us, to knock us in the face with what we're currently, going through globally. Look at these concepts. They're actually what happens. They're trying to wake us up, but rather than wake up, humans are doing what humans are really good at, and that's fighting. They get that fight flight, that base mechanism activated and just can't get out of it. They either don't want to look, don't have time, aren't interested, or they're working against it. But if we could just look at what is happening as being that which is trying to wake us up, I believe our interaction with it would be much different.
Those people that are reacting in that way, would you say, they're a part of us, right? And
they're stuck.
Yeah.
They're locked down in that beta bandwidth and they can't get out of that fight flight mode.
It's not their fault. You know, it is hard when you're in that. I mean, the fault isn't the right word, but it's like you can't get out of prison when you don't know that you're in one.
You can't become lucid in your dreaming if you do not cognize first that you're dreaming. And now we've come full circle. So regardless what words we're using to describe it, it's the same situation. Openness is all that's necessary.
Yeah.
Openness.
Yeah. I felt like I learned a lot of lessons in the pandemic. Oh, sorry to use the word. But I learned a lot of things, you know. I got sucked in to narratives at one point.
Mm-hmm.
I had some instincts about what I should and shouldn't do. And then I felt like I had to try and understand why I'd come up with those conclusions. And that got me deep into narratives. And I saw, you know, the hugely polarizing narratives. And I saw how, you know, you can get completely obsessed. And then I learned that it didn't really matter. Whatever information I came up with, it was absolutely irrelevant, because I was always going to do what felt right for me, and act and behave and do the things that felt right. And, you know, I had to learn. I had judgments all over the place. My judgments flew from one extreme to another. You know, if you think of them as various sides, I was on both sides quite, you know, at different points. And just watching that happen and finding that place where you totally and fully accept everyone, no matter what their view is and their position, and you respect it, and you don't need to justify yourself, you know, all these things. You don't need to justify yourself. You do what you do, what you feel is right. And how can you ask anyone to do more than that, you know? So
especially without realizing that the result of that is not going to result well.
yeah.
So you've just gotten to the center point of it all. Everybody always wants to pay attention to the tail of the elephant, or the tip of the right ear of the elephant, meaning all of the details, you know, that is going on, rather than the core issue, which is we're all sovereign or we're all not. Which one? Which reality do you want to go into?
Yeah, that was it. In the end, I just picked the reality that I wanted to be in, and proceeded, and stopped digging against it. Almost, it's like you're almost digging against the counter reality, just to make sure, but all you're doing is
the false light. Yes.
Yeah.
Anytime we step into something false, it's groundless. People want to know where the shadow matrix comes in. You know, my group is telling me a lot about the shadow matrix these days, because it's something that I don't wholly understand. But they put it to me like this, and it made a whole lot of sense. Anytime you come misaligned from yourself, you know, you are thinking one thing but behaving in another, or perhaps you're just saying something isn't true, such as, you know, something when you don't. That's maybe the biggest core one of them all. It's groundless, and because it's groundless, you slip through the living light, the real matrix, the God-given scenario going on around us, down into a false matrix. And it's happening right here. And this one, it looks just like this one. You don't even realize you're there, but you've gotten caught up in your mind constructs, your judgments, your lies. I know. And you're fighting against something out there now that doesn't know is stupid or hurting people or whatever. And, you know, it's very humorous when you finally get what's happened.
Yeah. And it's useful in a way, I think. I mean, using your analogy, I don't know if you mean it literally, or even maybe it just doesn't matter. However you mean it, when you fall into that false matrix, you know, that's great, because you can see that's what it's showing you. That's exactly the mirrors showing up to show you what you've been doing with your thinking. We don't want to be like that.
Well, it's false, and so false things keep coming back at you. The false matrix is a false thought.
Yeah, right.
Thought
right.
is matrix.
Yeah, so it's like, you know, if you keep entering the wrong calculations, you're going to get not the right answers.
Or because a false thought often takes us into judgment, where an accurate thought just simply takes us into more awareness.
Yeah.
And you know when you hit an accurate thought, because your view expands and it's more all-encompassing of everyone's view. You know, you begin to see the kaleidoscope. All the Crayolas in the crayon box. And, you know, you're not trying to battle any of the colors. You realize what they are.
Yeah, that's lovely.
And so, yeah, this is the mess we've all got ourselves in yet again. However, we've taken it from a personal, private scope to a global scope.
Yeah.
So we've kicked it up, and this will end the way it does.
Yeah. But it almost needed to become global, don't you think? Because global is correct. You know, we do need to start thinking. If you start thinking from me perspective, that's where you're going to go wrong. If you start thinking from us perspective.
The cycles are all about graduation or annihilation and recycling. So yes, it has to go global. And as it's going global, there's those of us who are lifting up and out. And there's others who are still caught in the beta in fight flight, and escalating things to another war. You know, at a certain point in the cycle where we are right now in the cycle we're talking about, annihilation.
Do you think that
it doesn't go any further? Game over.
Right.
And then a new one begins, and then you have to start all over again. Millions of years.
Are you talking there about micro consciousnesses, if you like? That, basically. I mean, it's a harsh view, but is what you mean, that there are, you know, consciousnesses that will realize the bigger picture, and I don't mean in a like awake political sense at all. I mean, I definitely do not mean that.
In a consciousness sense.
I mean, in a consciousness sense, that we, you know, it's not about, do you know, this is, I have to, just to digress, I had a DMT experience, and I was asking questions in it. I don't normally ask questions, I normally just listen. And I was like, what's going on? And they said to me, whoever they is, they said, what's the right, you know, what is right here? It's like, it's not about the right, it's about kindness. That's all it's ever about. That's all we're interested in, kindness. It's not who's got the right political view or the right, who knows what's going on with this or that.
There's only one question. Why can't people see the one question? I have no idea. They're engaged in fight flight. You know what I mean? And they're engaged in fight flight because they don't want to be a slave to the system. They realize that this is about not wanting to be slave. And yet the activity, the action that they're taking is taking them right there.
Yeah.
Question is, are we sovereign? And that means everybody. Are we slave? The question that everybody's answering right now. And if you're answering we're slave, and by the way, you answer that way by fighting the way that a lot of people are, you know, against something. You can't fight against if we're all sovereign. There is nothing to fight against if we're all sovereign. The thing is once that question's answered, we have to all learn how to get along on a global scale with the sovereignty. And this is what graduates. And I don't see us as being anywhere near that.
People don't see that, do they? They shout about how, you know, the government is controlling them and it's all lies, and that it's all there for fear and, you know, to control us. And but they don't realize that they're also acting. Their view is also born out of fear, and that's what's motivating. And that actually this is all just stories, you know, because actually now is now. All that is just, it doesn't even exist. It's just a narrative that's there in the moment, you know.
If you can just get into the core, if you can let all of the details, masks, lockdowns, da 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 da, if you can get away from all the details and get to the central question, are we all sovereign or not?
Mm.
Because
and if we're not,
our own answer is taking us either into a graduation or annihilation.
yeah, if you believe, or if the answer was that we're not, then there's nothing you can do about it. You might as well go and have a good time. But we are, so I believe
No,
we
I
are.
mean from their own perspective. So the people that are fighting against something,
Right.
okay, that those ones have to ask themselves, are all sovereign or not?
I think a lot of them would say no.
And they've taken themselves right into the annihilation. Yes.
And do you think,
By so doing, meaning they are not allowing who they are, say, is controlling them to do what it is that they want to do. They're not sovereign to do that, they're saying.
yeah,
And you see, the very thought is what's taking them into the thought is manifesting.
yeah,
And taking them into the very situation in which they want to get out of. And the way to get out is simple. All are sovereign, and you can't just say it.
you gotta live it, be it.
Yes, you have to actualize it.
Yeah, it's a
Yeah.
self-fulfilling prophecy for them.
And when you do that, when you don't run away and you don't start fighting, you learn how to face. And when you learn how to face, this is when you start receiving more information than you were previous. In fight flight, you're completely cut off. You think you know, and you're just, you know, out to do whatever you're going to do with that knowledge.
Yeah. Well, that was, yeah.
You begin to see that larger picture. You begin to see it more accurately. And one of the things you begin to see is the core reason for all of this, you know, how you fell into that scenario to begin with. Your own thought landed you there. But see, even though it was their own thought that landed there, their finger is pointed out there at some they.
Yeah.
Yes, you are the world. Your thoughts are what is manifesting all around you as your reality.
Yeah.
Period.
There's a lot of people that know, that say they teach that.
Yeah.
And yet at the same time, you know, they're totally harping, they've changed almost the lesson, and now it's all about this terrible thing and that terrible thing happening, and how we have to fight. And I don't know, is there a way to help that, or is you know, is a thing to step away and not get involved? I used to sort of sit there on Facebook and see all these huge debates unfold, and wanted to say that, you know, and then I just thought, you're just getting sucked in, step away. So I did in the end step away. I felt a lot better for it.
Social media is what we could call enemy territory. And so it's not the greatest to go into enemy territory and spread the news. You know, so yes, there's a fix. You yourself get clear. You yourself gain that clarity. in that increased clarity, be in the world, ground it here in the world. Those frequencies are here. Those frequencies will connect you with others who are either where you are or more clear, or not as clear, but close enough for you to reach. And those were the ones that you spend time with, dialogue with, create with. Again, increasing the actuality of it, here on the planet.
It's like the I can't say it. Hononopopo. Hono. Do you know what I'm talking about? This Hawaiian thing where I was talking about it the other day, and it is that really. You say these words, I love you. What is it? I love you. I'm sorry.
I'm sorry. Forgive
Me. Thank you. Probably in a different order, but anyway. But you sort of go through anything that's bothering you, and you say those things, and in healing yourself and your perspective, that's where others are.
You've healed the world, really. You've healed your own, certainly, but you've healed the collective also, because that just completed with one thing that needed completing with. So you raised the bar. You've lifted the whole thing up by doing that just yourself.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It's interesting because there's a fine line. Maybe the line is not very fine, but it looks fine when you look at it, between a sort of spiritual apathy where you're like, oh, if I don't think about it, it doesn't exist, which maybe is true. I said this to someone the other day. I had a physical problem, and I'm really like, should I go to the doctor and pursue it, or should I just it's not bothering me terribly, but it's something that, just to give you a bit of background, could go, I can tell you what it is actually. I lost some teeth in a motorbike accident, and apparently if you don't get new ones, the bone starts to dissolve, and that can go in quite a nasty place. And they told me get new ones in within 6 months. It's been 15 years. I haven't got them. So it's not bothering me too much. Aesthetically, maybe a little bit, but not a big deal. And I'm like, should I deal with this? Or if I deal with it, am I giving it, reality, and giving it, more strength and making it a thing? Or, which also, in dealing with it in the way that I, would have to deal with it, it takes a lot of time and money and energy. Or should I pour all my energy and everything into what I want to create, which is, I think, is a view that I've very much embodied with Conscious Explorers. Just, focus on the positive, keep giving energy to what you want to create. And it's not like we're saying that nothing bad happens. We're just not putting our energy there.
Now, the question that you've just asked, to put it simply, is should I focus where I would focus my attention, or should I shift my focus over there to what that other guy wants me to focus on? And putting your focus where you want it isn't ignoring anything.
Yeah.
So there's a difference between ignoring something and putting your focus where you want to create.
Yeah.
Other people will see it that way, though, because they're choosing to focus that away.
Right.
If you ask them to come over and focus where you are, they would understand that to be a distraction from what it is they're trying to do.
Right.
Yeah. So yeah, putting your focus where, it's about knowing who you are. Right. We're right back to self-inquiry and self-discovery. The reason I knew what to do during the current global state of affairs is because I knew who I was. I'm naturopathic. I'm not allopathic. So I've never walked myself into a doctor. I, hopefully never will. I don't participate in that. It wasn't, my decision wasn't for or against anything. My decision was, I know who I am. So I'm like, it's just, it's silly when people want to hold who you are against you.
Mm.
Yeah.
How would you advise someone to know who they are if they don't feel like they know who they are? Because a lot of people are just bombarded with the noise.
Well, what I like to bring to the attention of people who are in the allopathic system, who thinks that's all there is, I like to remind them that it's not.
Can you explain allopathy?
It's only existed for a very short period of time on this planet, in fact.
Yeah.
And they themselves don't even understand what it is. They don't understand it's the theory of germs. Allopathy is the theory of germs. It's germ theory. That's all allopathy is. That's why it's the treatment of symptoms with pharmaceutical drugs and surgical procedures. That's what it is. They don't even understand that that's what allopathy is.
Right.
I have people tell me, well, well, the doctor's just going to try to prescribe me something and I'm not going to take a prescription. And I'm like, well, then why are you working yourself in the allopathic system? Like, because that's what it is. So like, you're just sort of, and like, they still can't get out of it. They still feel like they have to go to the doctor, even though they're not going to, they, say that they're not going to take any drugs. And it's kind of, just because I want to know if I have something. I'm like, that's somehow helpful. You can't just check in on yourself and feel what's going on. You have to have somebody who doesn't know you at all that you're going to talk to for 5 minutes tell you something. Like,
not everyone can, though. That's the thing. Or not everyone trusts themselves, or sometimes things do happen, like I don't know, you break a leg or something, and
that's different. That's different. When we're talking about blunt force trauma, this is different. You're of course going to have a blunt force trauma treated, but we're talking about health here. Most people go to the doctor for health. They're not feeling well. But rather than do any research about human biology and their inner systems and inner organs of the body and how they work, rather than do anything like that, they'll go talk to somebody for 5 minutes and dick a tube of some pills home with them. And somehow do you see how some of or actually all of what's happening right now globally is happening?
Do I see it?
Yeah, people got into that mentality.
Right. Yeah.
And that mentality was just being shown to them.
I guess it's because they're overwhelmed. And so they've got lots going on in their life and they just, they're not feeling well. And
there's
they
always
want
an excuse to not know who you are. There's always going to be an excuse to not figure out who you are.
Sure.
But if you make it through an entire cycle, hundreds of thousands of years, lifetime, just saying you're not going to do it, you aren't going to make it. You're never going to grow. You're never going to graduate. You're always going to reach that point in the completion cycle, which there's an annihilation scenario, going down. You're always going to keep taking yourself to that same point. At a certain point, you have to just stop, because there is a going down from here, by the way.
So, okay. So 2 things, like one, someone who's just would be listening and they're like getting, they feel scared of that thought. Obviously, no one wants to be annihilated. So, but they don't know what to do. Like, what would you recommend to start with? Like a meditation, or obviously it is about listening to yourself. And I learned, it took me years, that there was always a voice basically that was telling me, guiding me, There was an intuition, there was a guidance system. But it took me so long to hear it, because it is a still, I don't want to get biblical, but it's a still little voice, it's a still small voice. And I'm not religious or biblical, but it feels like that, and it took me years to be able to get there. It was not easy. And I would love to help people tune in with that as quickly as possible. Really, that's a life goal of mine.
It's an imbalance. When that happens, it's an imbalance. It's always an imbalance. And the main imbalance that most people here in our 3D system are only being here. They're locking them, their own selves down in that beta bandwidth.
Right. But they have no clue that they're doing that, right?
Every night we go to bed for 8 or more hours, let's say 6 or more hours, because it's, you know what I mean?
Realistically, yeah.
That's when we go into the spiritual side of ourselves. And yet almost nobody sees the importance of bringing that back. They just, just wake up, get up, and like no time to integrate everything that just happened, what they just learned, any healing that took place, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Like, what happens when I sleep? Nobody does, but that's of course one large way that helps bring back more of a balance. You can't just be physical all the time. You can't just be going in beta all the time, and not experience that imbalance.
Okay, so maybe I could see it in a slightly different way, but I don't know. It's going to take me. It might be difficult to explain it, but let me start with one point that I feel like we're rendering our nows, right? Our nows are getting rendered, which means whether that's a digital thing or not, it doesn't really matter. It just, in the same way that when you've walked somewhere in the lucid dream, you walk from your house to your house isn't back there, and it wasn't there, it's not back there. There's no, you haven't really walked. It's just you've now rendered this new scene with the car. So within this now verse, there are experiences that we are having, and they're interesting. They're interesting. And 2, we learn from them, and 3, we can create from them. And so I feel that greater consciousness sets itself scenes that are not all, they're not easy necessarily. They can be quite difficult and quite harsh to feel courage. You need to be in a scenario where you need to show your courage. So there's going to be scary stuff going on, and it's almost like,
thank goodness.
Yeah. So there's one of 2 possibilities. If this was a dream, then everyone else in it could be a dream character, in which case what they're doing or not doing is basically irrelevant. They're just simply acting as a character to make the scene for you, so that you can now, I walk into a house where 2 guys are fighting and I help them. But these guys, they're just dream characters. They're not really in there to experience it. That's one possibility.
Okay. What's a dream character?
A part of yourself. Yes. Right. Okay. Yeah. Okay. But but even so,
characters are either played by the consciousness system itself or by a soul.
Or by what, sorry?
A soul, an individuated unit of consciousness.
Right.
Okay. So a dream character is also just, it's never just a dream character, like it doesn't exist at all. If it's there, yeah. So it's just a role being played by what people would call God.
Yes.
What we call the consciousness system itself. And that's what they're fighting against when they're fighting. Yes. So, okay, go on.
So in that case, okay, no one can really get annihilated because everybody is God consciousness anyway. And this dream character,
you can experience it real as real
can yes,
can't you?
That's true. Yeah, that's true. Yeah, that's true.
Just like we are right now.
It's that question, which is quite solipsistic, I suppose, which is it really all about, you? Or is it, there's many ways of looking about it. Is it all really you? Is it that, and I have thought this, we can't, what's the word? I can't think of the word. When you reach enlightenment, well, you can't reach, I think maybe not one person can reach enlightenment. Everyone, we have to collectively reach in this enlightenment because we are all part of the one thing, right? So, I guess what I'm trying to define here.
That's why we're all sovereign, or none of us are.
Yes, exactly. So if you find yourself, if you sort out your thinking to a point where you are totally in alignment and understanding of what is happening with greater consciousness, then that saves the world. That saves everyone in the hono no popo pono way that we just spoke about earlier. This is the thing, the best thing that we can do for humanity is,
I know that is the fact when you have actualized it to the point where there's no one left fighting.
yeah.
Yes, because again,
dead.
that is a reflection of this. And when you say, is it really all about me? Again, we have to define me or you.
Yeah.
Consciousness. We're talking about consciousness. And when you ask the question in that fashion, is this really all about consciousness? Yes, it is. Yeah. Yes, it is.
But then isn't it perfect? I just feel like I can see, and it is perfect. This is why the paradox, because from a great consciousness perspective, it's perfect. But from a human divided perspective, there's an absolute nightmare of things going on that you never want to say was perfect.
It's perfect in the sense that when you push the X on your computer, the X pops up on the screen.
Yeah.
Meaning reality is functioning perfectly. But it's not perfect in the sense that that is ideal. What's going on out there, that very much is not ideal.
No.
People are pushing a button and getting something what they feel is very different on the screen.
Yeah.
Right?
But it's also creating scenarios that are allowing for certain experiences. And, you've got to be careful with saying this, because people are like, you're saying that greater consciousness is just creating wars so that it can have fun learning stuff. But maybe, maybe in a way, that all these different playing out of scenes that we see, allow creation. Creation is born of destruction. In pretty much, something is always destroyed when something is created. That's sort of the deal, I suppose. So in that sense, is it necessary, all this kind of turmoil and trauma and all this kind of stuff that we see? It's a bit like, if it was all perfect, it would be like a film that just was like everyone lived happily ever after, and that's it. There's no film because everything's perfect and wonderful. Well, you see what I mean?
Yes. We could think of our experience here as a ride. This is a ride. We've gone on a ride. When you go to a theme park and you get on a ride, you have an idea that this ride is going to last 3 or 5 or 10 minutes, And this is a theme park and there's another ride you want to go on over there and another one. But what would happen if you went on and it just wouldn't stop? Wouldn't let you off.
Hellish.
Just, okay. Now that's a situation that we're in right now as a collective here. We've gone on a ride and it's not letting us off, and it's not letting us off.
Are you sure?
Because we let it's we who get ourselves off. It's we who put ourselves on, and it's we who put ourselves off. However, when you see yourself as a victim, when you go into that kind of mentality, you put yourself in the role of slave, of helplessness, of somebody else doing something to you, and because you're lost in that thought illusion, you can't get off until you stop thinking that.
I see what you're saying, and it definitely resonates. I just wonder if it's some higher level, it's just consciousness evolving, because everything is the consciousness. So all those different aspects, all the bits that are at war, all the bits that are exploiting people, all those darker bits are also part of it, because can they be anything outside of it, of consciousness? That is, can there be anything outside of consciousness?
Well, regardless of source creator, experiencing a net gain, let's say, from all its experience, is distinct from an individuated unit of consciousness and its own parameters. Okay. And
yeah.
Its own parameters, it wants to grow, it wants to experience as much of it as it can. And so, like, if it gets stuck somewhere, it can't really do that. And it, from its perspective, can experience horrific things in that. And does it want to? Is that perfect to it? No, there's an imperfection in that. There's something that's done it, but what is it? What have I done that got me in this predicament? You know what I mean? So it's learning from its own parameters.
Yeah. So it's like, obviously, you can't really talk about something infinite. There's not really the words, but if we were to visualize it, it would be like this massive infinite blob of infiniteness everywhere all at once, dividing itself up and giving it autonomy. So it's like, you're on your own and you're on your own now, but you're still a bit of me, but you're on your own. Go off and do, go and experience stuff. And and some of these little bits have got themselves in a right pickle. And
that right pickle we call our world.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, this is the thing. We look at our world and we can see, I think anybody who looks at the situation of things going on would say there's some real problems happening. Question is, I mean, I can feel I'm going slightly round in circles.
Right, because we're always going to come back to the same thing. When you hit the center from the beginning, there's nowhere else to go.
Yeah, exactly. That's why, yeah.
We're all sovereign or we're all slave.
Yeah. The thing is, like, I have these amazing conversations with people like yourself. And then I come back to the kind of, when all is said and done, there are things going on and they don't look good, like the environment is not in a great state, for example. And I think, I'd like to jump into another universe where the environment is doing fabulously. And I wonder if it's just being rendered for my experience, if it's just simply a rendering, it doesn't really matter. Not really. Because it's
What's it a rendering of?
Well, if reality is being rendered in the way that, let's say, if you could imagine someone, pardon?
It's a rendering of you.
It's a rendering of you, yes. But if you can imagine there's someone writing code and just making this.
So it matters, is what I'm saying.
I see.
It's a render. You don't look at the rendering as a thing unto itself. It's the mirror of something.
Right. It matters in that way.
You, of consciousness. And so,
right. Thank you. Yes, that makes sense. It matters in that way. Yeah, that's perfect answer. Thank you. Yeah, that makes sense.
In experience, everything matters. We
Yes.
always talk about a thing in itself, but we're not that until we are source consciousness, right?
Yeah.
That's the
Yeah.
only time we're at a thing into itself. At any other point within what we would see as the dimensional existence, we're in an experience, and in experience, everything matters.
Yeah. I have a quote that
And everything literally is consciousness, your consciousness, the quality of your consciousness.
right. Yeah, yeah. Yeah. I have a quote that jumped into my head once, and I find myself just saying it. I don't know where it comes from, but it's just absolutely nothing matters. Absolutely everything matters. And to me, that's just, it means something to me. That's hard to put into words, but it's like, it's like we are so irrelevant in the huge scheme of the whole universes and multiverses, and yet we are so relevant. It's just both. This is the paradoxes that I was talking about earlier. They're both true.
Well, I think that when you're going into nothing matters, then I had a trail of thought with this, but let me see if I can get it back. No, it's just whizzed on. Let's see if it comes back later.
Interestingly, nothing does matter a lot, because nothing, no thing is where everything is created, I think, in some ways. In the what do they call it? The sparkling nothingness of
Well, now
pure
you just went
potential.
into Tantra and Jnana. So, and what nowadays we would call positive and negative, which, takes people so off track because of the way the associations they make with positive and negative. But with Tantra engages the world, right? It uses its front body to connect with the world and advances itself that way. Whereas in Jnana, and I'm a Yanni, you go inward and you start sloughing off what you're not. Neti, right? Not the body,
Yeah.
not the breath, not the mind. Okay. And so there's until you get back in toward what you are, right? And so, yes, you can go in both ways. So in the sense of the Yoni, yeah, nothing matters because you're letting go what's created, not fundamental. You're letting go what's created for what's fundamental. Whereas a tantric, everything matters because you're engaging your front body, you're engaging the world, you're engaging the visual appearance to get through to what you are. So in that sense, sure, everything matters to the one and nothing matters to the other, both simultaneously at the same time. However, it's not meaning nothing matters in the sense of, well, I shouldn't care about it. That's completely different.
Yeah. It is.
Different and unique idea. So long as we're in the experience fields, that's a completely different idea.
Yeah, because I shouldn't care about it is going away from love. So those ideas, you can let go of everything. If done with love, then that's cool. But yeah, I think it all comes down to kindness. I really do. I just feel like
Compassion, sure.
kindness and compassion, because when you're kind and compassionate, you're taking care of all the pieces of yourself, all the other parts of the one, and treating people.
Yeah, compassion brings us closer together, whereas judgment, what?
Brings us further apart.
Creates a larger and larger divide, right?
Yeah.
A bigger and bigger reason to fight.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So easy though, isn't it? The first time I took ayahuasca, when I left the experience, I can't remember what the other words were, but the ayahuasca told me that it was going to show me my thoughts constantly, and one of the words it was going to say at me was judgment. When I make a judgment, it was going to say judgment. A victim, I think, was one. Judgment, victim, maybe persecutor. I don't know. It had like, there were 4 words. I hope I wrote it down somewhere. But I couldn't believe, like, I do not see myself as a judgmental person. I'm super open-minded and very, like, you know, very much a believer in equality and all these things. But I couldn't believe just having this voice going, judgment, blah, judgment, blah. Like, how many judgments we make, you know, even if not necessarily about other people, but just about things all the time. And that puts you in time. That is never now. Now is never with judgment. It's just, yeah, it's a hard habit to break.
Yeah.
It's got to work on it, right? You know, these things they're not effortless. I guess that's the bottom line.
Wouldn't be much fun if it were effortless. We would just come in and say, oh, well, that was all that was. That was easy to figure out. Yeah. Yeah.
Do you think love is effort? Do you think that the reason it's kind of set up that way is you show love through effort?
Well, I think that love is something that we learn to be, not. I think it's effortful if we attempt to enact it prior to being it. Yes.
Right.
But if you get, make a practice of going into yourself and discovering the self, you discover that, the first thing that anybody can hit, just sitting down to meditate for 30 minutes, or just laying still for 30 minutes, you hit that, that sense of peace within yourself.
Yeah.
And that's your natural state, because that's what you went into as you relaxed, as you went into your parasympathetic nervous system. That's our natural state.
Yeah.
So many people are locked in the beta and in the sympathetic nervous system, which is our fight flight. And
right.
they just can't seem to let themselves out of it. They see too big of a threat, too big of a reason to not let the fight flight go, to not rest, to
hard. It's hard. Like yeah, it's very programmed in the body sometimes. And like, I had to give a talk in front of an audience, and I was so happy to be there, and I was so happy to talk to the people, and I didn't even feel particularly nervous going to it. But once I had the microphone in my hand, I was really shaking like crazy. And I had to just say, I'm really sorry about this. My body's just doing what it does. And yet, I'm so happy to be here chatting to you all. And it's hard. There's certain things I know I'm definitely being let fear get the better of me. And horrible feeling.
You've just made a brilliant distinction between the overriding consciousness, us, and the consciousness of the body, which is our central nervous system. And yeah, our body is having its own experience of what's going on.
Yeah. And it can be very different.
This is why a lot of people are trapped in beta and fight flight, because the body is all they see. You say, who am I? And they identify themselves with the body. And they never get any further than that, because they're locking themselves in beta.
Yeah.
Not bringing back their dreams, because they're not meditating, because they're not doing peaceful things like going out on the boat in the water and just kicking your feet up and watching the sky, because we're not doing things like that, But if we would do things like that more, and we would do things like, how does the situation that we're in right now, where everybody has to work so hard to survive, come about? For us sacrificing that for ourselves, sacrificing that to do this other. We've made a choice. People aren't understanding that what they're experiencing, what we all are experiencing, are our own choices. And choices can be cumulative, right? So we start making the choices way back when, we're in the single digits. We get a certain pattern of making choices. For instance, when this happens, then I do this. When something looks scary, I go into fight flight and function from that. Do that long enough, and we get ourselves into a situation where we're in right now.
Mm. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's
If everybody that had to work so hard to make a living stopped, like got together like what the truckers did,
yeah, they're great.
which was just brilliant, by the way. What a wonderful way to show the world who's really in control, you know, in our current world, especially because if nothing can get from point A to point B, and this trucker's the only one who does that, you know, everything stops. Now,
They're
if people
great.
in general would stop living in fear, which again is fight flight, which is that lockdown in beta, which they themselves did, stop doing that.
Yeah.
And, you know, literally throw caution to the wind, because you're going to have to in a situation like that. You know, some people only literally live month to month and, you know, just have the money they have in their hand for whatever they're going to eat that day. Once you get yourself there, yeah, it's a much bigger decision to just say, not going to do it anymore. Look at where this has gotten me. Not look at where they have gotten me. You haven't gotten it. It's going to continue, because you've just, as soon as the finger's pointed out there, you cast yourself a slave. Understand that.
Yeah.
Somebody is doing something other than you. You can't stop it. It's only when you do this that you can change. You can do something different.
Yeah.
You're back in the driver's seat. You're back in command. You've just acknowledged who did the whole thing, who got yourself here. And you start to reflect and be able to see, you know, yeah, I've been making choices out of fear. And, you know, validate those choices as much as you are. The second that finger goes out there and says, because you've just slipped right back in. And it's a hard one. It's a hard one to get yourself out of, but you have to start. You have to, you know, begin seeing that you are the reality.
I mean, do you have any techniques or advice to what to do when you feel that, you know, like completely overcome with fear and you can't think straight, you know, and you just, you know, you can feel like a tightly wound little cog that's getting tighter and tighter.
Stop.
How would you suggest?
Lay down. Go to sleep.
Yeah.
Stop.
This is what I've been doing, and this is why I'm so.
There's a nice easy one. Just stop.
Yeah.
Take a deep breath.
Right.
And I will tell you, if at the end of 3 deep, full breaths, you feel the same, never going to happen, is it?
No.
Never going to happen. You are, of course, going to feel very different after you just stop and breathe. And that's because of what the breath always tells us. It's always saying one thing: you're alive, everything's fine, here I am, this is your energy. Like, how can you, you know, once you're assured of that, which you are, most people don't cognize that this is why, but this is why after you just stop and take even one deep full breath, you know, a bunch just, you know, you're able to release a bunch of that tension.
Yeah. So I mean, that's why I'm very like, I'm very excited about what the Monroe Institute are doing, because that is what they work on. They work on audios to change brain states. And like you said, in this world, that's how it's manifest. You know, what your brain states are doing, pretty much.
And it's everybody's choice.
Yeah.
Attention to themselves. It's everybody's choice to do that or not. Most people don't even realize, you know, they point to the body when you ask them who they are. Very few would go right to the mind.
Well, they don't necessarily think of it. And I mean, I think
because, and now who chose to not?
Who chose to not think of it? I mean, I don't know. I can't speak for anyone else. I've still thought about it my whole life, but it's taken me a long time to realize. Even now,
can anybody make your choices for you?
No.
You can't tell me whether I'm going to focus in on myself. You can't tell me where I can stop and take a deep breath. If you can, if I think you can, I've just cast my own self as slave. I mean, we have to start catching these things.
Yeah. This is why, I mean, I love that now you can just, when I'm, well, pretty much every day now, I just at some point put, if my head is going somewhere I don't want it to, I just put some tones on and go to a better space. You know, I get a bit of a help.
Nature,
Why not?
the elements, the sky,
Yeah,
water,
nature.
plants, animals. All of that stuff will just bring us right back to, oh,
Music.
yeah, just go take a walk outside.
Mm.
You know, and look at the world, like, right, not the news feed coming, you know, through the tubes. Just look outside with your own eyes and around you, and you'll see, wow, you know,
Yeah.
never guess some of the stuff that's coming through the news feeds. You know,
Like you're staring at your phone, trying to see
everything
what
was very different right here than what they're saying. You know,
yeah.
you begin to put two and two together.
Yeah. It's like when you're staring at the phone to see what the weather is, and you could have just stepped outside. That would have told you.
And had a look. But the thing is when you're outside taking your walk, everything's just fine. There's not bombs falling. There's, you know, generally not any kind of alerts. And again, when we lose that contact with nature, which we can lose is if we just take our own mental mind constructs into nature, you know, preppers and getting out and doing all of that, which is fun. And the whole thing is fun. Have some fun, sure. But understand that you're having fun and that, you know, that's not something that we actually have to create. I understand why people think that as consensus we are, but that's because they don't realize that all of the people that look like they're out there are actually our own body system cells. Again, that is a mirror of this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Feel guilty though, don't they? I think.
Can't run. That's why not to run, by the way. You can't run from yourself. You know, this is just a surround sound view of yourself, an outside in view of yourself. Yeah.
Yeah. Just have to
It does
remember.
get funny when you do realize. Yeah. Not that what's happening in the world right now is funny. It's very far from funny.
Yeah. That's what I mean. You just that you want to.
But when you
Don't
get
want
how
to
it happens, that's when it gets
Yeah.
funny. When you finally get how that happens and how you yourself are participating in it.
Yeah.
This is a hard nut to swallow too. You
So
have
hard
to
not to follow.
see the ways in which you are participating in that, and at least begin to work on those.
Do you think if you fully healed everything, every part of you, that these things would just disappear?
Yes, we would see it be reflected back to us. There's no separation.
I mean, that's huge, isn't it? That's one huge statement. That's massive. That's like, yeah. I mean,
Stand in front of a mirror, like do the actual practice, prove it to yourself in a way that is practical and can actually be done. Stand in front of the mirror.
okay.
You know, we actually can't see ourselves, right? So stand in front of the mirror.
I hate looking in the mirror.
And well, there's a few things that you can do here. One, look until you no longer see yourself. That's an interesting one.
I've done that. Yeah.
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 But another one is to, you know, when you're trying to prove to yourself things that are true about the world, well, look in the mirror and see if you can make it smile before you do.
Huh. I never tried that one.
Well, you can't, of course. And that is to prove to yourself that you can't. You can't make the world smile until you first smile. You change, then the world changes, not the other way around. And so we have to constantly be working on ourselves.
What's the disappearing thing about? Because we had this thing at school that if you looked in a mirror for long enough, it was one of these myths. You would see who you were in a past life. And so that's where I first tried it. And I looked in the mirror, and eventually, if you stare for long enough, you do disappear. And actually, as you're looking, it does feel like your face is starting to warp, into some other. My friend, who was a white guy, said he saw himself as a black woman.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if that's true or not, but that's what he said. And I've noticed it in lucid dreams as well, looking in mirrors and seeing completely different.
You can begin to see more of who you are, certainly, your other soul lifetimes. But you can also see that what we call physicality isn't really physical.
Yeah.
Right? It's a visual appearance. We're creating the visual appearance because we create it. It can also uncreate it. But also consciousness is everywhere all at once, and you also learn that you can shift from one point in perspective in your template to another point in perspective in your template. Most people don't realize in out-of-body experiences that they're not their earth person. Just feel so much like we are. I started exploring that when I started going out of body completely by happenstance. Really, I was listening to an interview. What's his name? Something Albert. Anyway, he was saying that when we're flying, we're not really flying by ourselves. It's funny, and that thought had never occurred to me before. And he said, "Yeah, just look behind you, and you'll see who's there actually holding you through that experience."
I've wondered about that. I've often felt like someone was pulling me so many times. I thought someone's taking me by the hair.
One time I was flying, darned if I couldn't feel an arm around myself.
Right.
But I was always scared to death to turn around to see who I was, but I did attempt it. But anyway, things like that got me into wondering also who I was in these experiences. And so looking at myself in a reflecting surface, in a pool of water or in a mirror or in a window, that could reflect who I was back at me. So the very next time I was in an experience, I'm like, oh, I'm going to go see who I am, or if I'm myself. And I was sort of like in a futuristic looking municipality, like at the bottom of the stairs to a municipal building. And I saw it had a lot of windows. So I went over there and I looked at myself, and I was this 9-foot tall, white-haired, white-bearded wizard with staff, purple robes, and even the hat. I mean, just everything. I was like, get out. I'm Merlin. And then I started looking at myself in every experience. And that's when I started realizing that I was almost never my earth person in these experiences. I almost always was someone else. And then I started realizing that there was a difference in the experience within the event of being someone else. And I could detect that, oh yeah, because the thing about not having any fear, I'm like, there's got to be a reason why, in some of these experiences there's no fear, and then in other ones there's fear. And that's when I learned, fear comes with the body. So when I'm in a full physical manifestation, whether that be 654 or 3D physical, there's fear, fear comes with the body. But when I was my own consciousness merged in what was clearly the consciousness field of that person, and this is another level that I discovered, no fear, because there's a distance between me and that body. I'm just like, I'm in observation central, just sort of looking out through their eyes at what they're doing and stuff.
Right.
Yeah.
Can you explain 654? Like why that frequency specifically, and what does it relate to? Does it relate to a brain frequency? What does it mean?
The 6th dimension, 5th dimension, 4th dimension.
I see what you're saying.
Galactic space. Yeah.
Got you.
Galactic space. That's the consensus territory for galactic level consciousness. or in other words, what we call the ETs, which are simply beings who aren't confined to their own planet anymore. They graduated 3D and now they're in a galactic playground.
Right. Is there more than 6?
Actually, universal playground, because, you know, there's other galaxies, and galaxies are, you know, inexperienced with the other galaxies. What was the question?
I think there's more than 6.
There is, but after that, we, you know, get into the mind field and everything is geometry. Yeah, geometrical structures, fascinating. That's my favorite. That's where I'm from. And those, you know, as geometrical structures, you can manifest, you know, sort of any way you want, you know. But yeah, the only ones that would be relatable to people in the third dimension, you know, is 6543. Oh, and 2 and 1. Of course, we know the rest of the animal kingdom and plant kingdom and mineral kingdom, but those aren't, you know, upright.
Yeah.
Ourselves.
Do you feel like you can direct where you want to go within those different realms?
I feel like I never want to. No, my own larger consciousness brings me into what and where it is it wants me to observe. And I did learn, however, that if I had a question, like, you know, I have a question, can I just stay here another moment? And there's something I want to see, that, you know, they would, you know, put me back there, you know, let me see what I was wanting to see and then shift me to elsewhere.
Yeah, I came to the conclusion that there's been times where I've been very passive, as in show me everything, and other times where I've been very active. I want to see this, I want to do that, I want to learn this, I want to do that. And I've sort of found a middle ground with it. Sometimes you have to step back, because otherwise how are you going to see and learn the answers?
Mm-hmm.
But I think it's okay as well to you know, be active there, and ask the questions that
we are the question asking element, they are the answer asking element. And so if we stay to our own element, then we get much further, much faster. I was always interested in the mechanics of reality and the way reality works. And so synchronous space and time, holding synchronous states, the particle in the wave.
Yeah. I feel that though. Do you feel like do you have a sense of that? I definitely feel it out of body. And I know for sure in my dreams that things are happening concurrently, and that they then get suddenly put into a timeline when I return, because that's the only way this brain.
Because our consciousness gets encapsulated again.
Yeah.
Parameter. And in that parameter, yes, it's a 1 foot in front of the other, or in other words, linear format.
Yeah.
However, in 3D space, and this is something I learned, and this is fascinating, we experience 3 dimensions of space. A lot of people don't give this a lot of attention because they think we experience time. And the thought of time is different than time itself.
Right.
So the third dimension itself is 3 dimensions of space. And those 3 dimensions of space create structures, 3-dimensional structures, where I'll just call it body, or physicality is what we call it, you know, is pretty much all we experience.
Yeah.
You know, 6, 5, and 4D. This is where time begins. The 4th dimension is not time. The 4th dimension is a 4th dimension of space. It's and it's a graduation from a planetary curriculum, a 3rd grade classroom, into a 4th grade classroom. And that 4th grade is in galactic space. It's not time, but it is, in my estimation, where time itself begins to be acutely experienced. And this is different than the sensation of time that we have here. It's completely different, you know. Linearity, even in space, picking up 1 foot and putting it in front of the other creates an illusion or sensation of time, but still is not time itself. So the sixth, fifth, and fourth dimensions are there additional spatial dimensions. In 4D, we experience 4 dimensions of space and 1 dimension of actual time. And that dimension of actual time with the 4 dimensions of space lets us visit any point along the horizontal axis, meaning you could right now in your body as you move to the point in which you were first born, or any point along your horizontal axis, your timeline, birth to whatever death is.
Right. So the time dimension.
We can't do that here. And that means we do not experience time itself.
Right. That's very clever.
The illusion or the idea or the sensation of time, semblance of time.
Yeah.
But not time itself, not until the 4th dimension. And then the 5th dimension, we experience 5 spatial dimensions, and we'll get into what those spatial dimensions are or could be in just a moment, and 2 dimensions of time. And this is when, as soon as you can access any point along your own horizontal axis, you realize there's a vertical axis, and this is the 5th dimension. And just like the 3 dimensions of space, side to side, up, down, forward, and back, have their own spectrum of a horizontal axis. It also has the vertical axis, right? And so you realize the same thing is true of time. So the 1 dimension of time allows you to, in the 4th dimension with that extra dimension, allows you to experience any point along your own horizontal axis.
Right.
You start to, it's because it's connected to the vertical axis, you start to have some awareness of that vertical axis. And as you graduate through 4D toward 5D, you begin to access the vertical axis, which lets you come in and out of space-time and to anywhere that you want, which is how most of the ETs get here. And 6 dimensions are 6 dimensions of space plus 3 dimensions of time. And I'm not going to go into a whole bunch of over there because it's really interesting just what starts to happen in 4D. And some of us are already experiencing that from right here where we are, right? Because we're graduating out of 3D into 4D, and it's coming into our range of experience. That's what the out of body is. That's what the shift from here to elsewhere is.
Right. So yeah, I actually am following you. I'm following you pretty clearly, I think. So so time doesn't exist till we get to the 4th. Well, perception of time exists, but actual time doesn't exist until we get to the 4th dimension, where we can travel back and forth on our own timeline, on our personal kind of timeline. Well, the history of time along there. And then on the 5th dimension, we can come out of the time. So there's this way up. And then on the 6th, which you haven't got to yet. So you're saying there's 6 dimensions of space. I'm trying to think how that might manifest.
Well, because our minds can barely even go into the 4th, I stopped going that far. But
yeah, but I can. Is it like a concurrent thing?
Can you see a 4th dimensional structure?
Yeah.
Can you see what would a 4th dimensional structure look like to you?
Can I see it? No, but I know what you mean. I mean, I can relate to your experience, what you're talking about. Can I see a 4th dimensional structure?
Well, like if a 1D is a line, and a 2D is a flat plane,
and 3D,
and 3D is like a box or a sphere, or however, whatever shape you want to go with there. What would a 4D shape look like?
I can't see a 4D shape.
So to me, it's like a shape within a shape. So you have to start going in 4D. And 3D, we experience a separation between ourselves and every other thing. But as we're graduating from that perspective into 4D, we start to see that it's an inner space that is letting us. And we sort of know this in a sense, because like the deeper we concentrate our attention down into ourselves, the more energy exudes off of ourselves. So the more we go in, the more we go out.
Yeah.
right? And so it seems like a space within a space, a square within a square, right?
Yeah.
And that almost gives you a sense of a larger reality outside of a more narrow or constrained reality, right? So it
Yeah.
almost gives you a sense of someone standing behind you. So having perspective right here in your own footsteps, looking out through your own eyes at the same time as there's this other aspect behind you, looking out through its eyes, it sees more. It sees you and everything else, right?
Right.
Just everything else.
Nice.
So yeah, you can start to get a feeling for it when you think of it this way. And it was given to me in a dream state like that the other morning. And
Whoa.
I could see it so clearly, the space within the space, because I can hold synchronous states. And so that was one of the ways that it showed me. That's the experience of being in 4D, and how 3D is right there inside of 4D.
Yeah.
How they have access. Yeah.
All of the D's are inside the D's. Like 3 is in 4, and 4 is in 5, and 5 is in 6.
Consciousness itself subdivides within itself. Yes, this is important to recognize from the very beginning. There's never a second. No time.
So hit me with 6 as best as you can. I might lose you, but
between no time, right? One without a second, as the Vedantins say.
One without a second. Hmm.
Meaning all that we're currently experiencing is never in actuality happening. It's a big hypothetical. It's a big old what if.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. I like that. I always thought,
Another word to say that, because this is interesting to maybe go into, is that it's a potentiality field.
yeah, there's the wave of our quantum wave.
But in a potentiality field, there is no actuality. It's all pure potential.
But does one ever manifest one of those, or never? And never, none. It's just
We
a
never
constant
step out
wave.
of the potentiality field. Consciousness itself subdivides within itself. So that big old what if created the potentiality field. That's the largest field that we're in, right? Within the potentiality field, we would perceive as the blueprints, right? Blueprints got created for these physical spaces. So there's this blueprint field, this drawing board where everything gets architectured.
We're ideas.
And that's it. It's never more than an idea. Ideas get architectured. And ideas within potentiality.
Okay. Where consciousness is imagination.
Potential ideas. Yes, right. What we call actuality fields or physical fields are not in actuality this. We call them this because the experience of them is very different than the experience within the blueprint field, which is very different from the experience within the potentiality field itself, which is very different itself from consciousness itself without experience.
Yeah.
Well, we call dimensional existence as the consciousness and experience.
That makes sense. Why, when you look in anything, all you find is a lot of nothing.
It will fractal down and fractal down and fractal down endlessly to nothing. Yes, void. Yeah. Void that's what we call the potentiality field. We call it void.
That's why nothing matters.
The void.
It matters a lot.
Well, in that sense, nothing matters.
Nothing
in a very different way. Nothing very much matters. Yes. it's from that which everything springs. Yes.
Yes. I always thought that time was an energy currency, and it feels like a certain thing, but when you do something, you have to put time in it, and you put it's energy. It's like it's almost like a gift that you give, a present. You give a present of time to make something happen. and the longer it takes, perhaps the more effort. I don't know. I can't really put it into words, but that's what came to me. Can't remember, on some other psychedelic. Time is energy currency.
Well, isn't that
Rather
what,
than this linear thing, you know,
isn't that
that,
what lifetime is?
yeah. Yeah.
An energy bubble
Yeah.
that gets something done. Yeah, hopefully, but there are lifetimes which get nothing done, and enough of those, and yes, they dissolve.
I dissolve. Is
Because
this
what doesn't grow inevitably starts to experience entropy. Yeah.
yeah, because you know what works survives and what doesn't dies.
Another way of looking at it, sure. Yeah.
Is this in any way in alignment with Thomas Campbell's theory? Because that those words, individuated unit of consciousness, there's some words he used, right? I'm not not super familiar. I did try to read his books ages ago. I loved the first bit, and then I found a lot of it very repetitive, but I really dug a lot of what he said, and I would love to
Well, unit of consciousness was a term used prior to Tom Campbell, but he's probably who made the individuated unit of consciousness more popularly known.
Right.
And I like it because I like to talk about consciousness. So talking about the soul in terms of an individuated unit of consciousness works for me. Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting, that word individuated. It's
Mhm.
been made into an individual. Is that what it means, really?
Well, it means consciousness itself, yes, subdivided within itself, individuated within itself.
Yeah. And his theory, of course, is that it's data, really. It's
All data.
yeah, ones and zeros.
I can relate with that either. Well, that's just a language.
Yeah.
So it's, yes, you could say it's created of language.
Yes, I like that.
You can
I
also
mean,
say it's reality is created of thought. I mean, it's all saying the same thing. So whether you say thought or you say idea or you say data, you're talking about the same thing.
yeah.
Yeah.
Wasn't it Bruce Lee who said, be careful what words you use, because you're making spells. Spelling is literally,
Speaking is spell casting. So is thinking.
words are a mantra and a prayer and a
Words are, thoughts are what create structures. Yes.
something.
Scenarios, situations. Yes.
Yeah, you gotta be careful with the words that you listen to as well. I don't listen to the news anymore for that reason.
Absolutely. And that's why where to put in not just the words, because we realize that, subliminal sound is also spell casting and being used in our contemporary society. Yeah. And not in a hidden way. They're very overt about this. Yes. So yes, where we put ourselves, people who put themselves on social media are,
But do you know, I feel like,
putting
you want to say good
themselves
things.
in a sinkhole, because of who's behind that. And are we all sovereign? Yes. Do they have every right to do it? Yes. Do we have to put ourselves there in the middle of what they're creating? No.
No.
And when we
Plant
talk,
some flowers there too, right? We can go and plant some flowers in there too. You just don't want to stay there for too long. But you can.
but you notice what happens when you go there at all. Yes. Does it happen to you?
What, you get sucked in?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, that's why I've learned to link straight in. I link straight into Conscious Explorers. I've learned to link straight into my emails and bypass the news page. And
Yes. So that's
It's
good. Yeah,
newbie.
we keep a group there too, so everybody that wants to can stay in touch. But really, when you do that, one, you just get buried, because if you're not participating on it, the algorithms there don't send your material out to others. And yeah, it's like 10 people of, that, then that's it. It's a very narrow bandwidth of people you're reaching there. So it can be seen as a waste of time, really, unless people are regularly on your own group page, then it could be, perhaps a bit different.
So where can we find your page? Yours is you've got your own forum, right?
Well, when we created a consciousness experiment of jumping off social media, when the whole global thing happened, I could see the necessity for getting into our own camp rather than positioning ourselves in what could be called enemy camp, which is just ridiculous, right? You're talking about giving yourself your own handicap. So we did a complete restructuring of the website, the forum board. We built the Patreon. It's an unconditional one. And so like nothing there is hidden. We don't run that like you have to be a patron to see anything. Just everything's available to view. And if you like it, you can support it. Yeah, and so we've just been doing all of that ever since. I link in with others through other forum boards. Rather than through other social media. Forum boards are, on social media, it's like or heart or put an emoji or a GIF or a 3-word response to something. It's really deconstructing people's ability to think and even construct a sentence and even spell, right? Because they're trying to create these words there that are not words, like TGIF, or, all of that kind of stuff. It's just down, I don't even know the word, what,
I know what you're trying to say.
garden level way of
Grading
one's mind. Yeah. And on forum boards, you can actually write, like paragraphs. And I noticed when I came off of there, and I wasn't on for very long, by the way, I didn't use it for very long, just a couple or maybe a few years. And I noticed when I went back to the forum board and attempted to construct paragraphs, it was challenging. It was really challenging to get my own mental faculties back. Now, it didn't take much because, again, I didn't participate in that very much, and I was a writer to begin with. But yeah, I could see how it really, deconstructed some of my faculties, just from being there and communicating in that way, for even just a few years.
So what forums would you recommend, and what's your website? Is it your name.com or?
No, the website's consciousnessexploration.com.
Right. Yeah,
Your consciousexplorers.com. Yeah.
Yeah, we're close. We're very close. Nice.
Everything else is linked to from that, so everything else can be found there. But the forum boards I like to stay in touch with. The Astral Pulse, which has been around for quite some time, probably the oldest board for OBEers and astral projectors. I like the Law of One people.
Yeah.
Another board that I link in with. I just recently, Tom Campbell's, of course, my big toe. I don't spend a lot of time there. And since Ted Vollers passed away, which is who I really talked to when I was there, I don't post there, but I like to stay in touch, and I will periodically read. And I want to make an effort, now and again to post, because I would like to see that board continue to thrive. And then the last one, I just recently linked in because somebody wrote Carrie Cassidy about me, and I had that Carrie Cassidy interview on Project Camelot. That reminded me of her partner back in the day, Bill Ryan. And so I looked to see what he was doing these days and found out that he still has Project Avalon and some forum boards. So I've linked in with them there. Yeah, that's a great board. That's probably one of the most active boards.
I'll check them out. Nice.
Yeah.
Avalon. Yeah, I was just wondering if you heard of wing makers. It was one I used to look at years and years ago. I don't know where it's at, but it's not a forum. It was just.
No, it's not a forum board. It's just a website. And yeah, I'm familiar with that. Yeah, fascinating story. Love the stories. Humans are good with stories, aren't we? We are on the stories.
Yeah, I don't know if it's true or not, but it was a cool story.
I've got one coming through to me. I'm like, they're making me into a storyteller now with the crystal. I'm like telling pictures through the crystal. There's a story that's coming through with it.
That's fabulous.
To the Anunnaki, to ancient Egypt, to Atlantis, you know. And so, and this is linking up with the out-of-body experiences I've been given also. You know, some of these beings that come through the crystal are beings I've actually met in OBEs.
Oh, wow.
Or connect with me in OBE states. So yeah, it's sort of all coming into something here. We'll see. I'm having fun with it.
That's incredibly cool. Do you teach? Do you give people lessons on going into those states at all?
Yeah, but it doesn't draw many people. Not many people actually make it to the point of practice. They're too busy over there on Twitter.
Yeah. Right. Yeah, people want quick fix.
And it's sad. It's very sad for me. Yeah.
Well, don't be too sad just yet. I feel like maybe there's a shift in attitude, and people are getting burnt out by social media, and they're getting fed up. You know, I just think it's going to reach a boiling point, and people will want something more real.
They're not jumping off.
Not yet.
They'll stay right there. And by the way, the false matrix, and it will achieve a gravity over them, which it already has, which is why they can't jump off. And they will see that false light in a positive light, and or of the good that they could possibly do there while it goes into the transhumanist timeline. Yeah, the merging man with AI.
That is
about it, but all of it was designed for. It's what they like to call a soul trap. You know, like when you die, don't go to the light. You know, somebody who's never gone out of body are just repeating this crap. You know, I'm like going, oh my God, it's so sad. It's so sad.
Wait, hang on. You're saying do go to the light or don't go to the light? Who says?
No, I'm saying that's what they're trying to teach people now.
Jehovah's Witness? No, not them. Is it them?
There's just people.
The Scientologist, one of them says, "Do not go to the light is a trap."
When you first went out of body, your very first out of body experience, did you have any control whatsoever?
No.
And you won't when you die at the moment of death either. When you go out of your body at the moment of death, you're going to have no control. You spent no time during your life readying yourself for that event.
I hope you're wrong about that. I hope I would have some control. I mean, I've had bazillions of out of body experiences. And
there's a thing as a successful death. And a successful death is being able to carry memory with you through what we call death, you know, so that we don't incarnate again in a body on the same ride, you know.
Yeah.
But there's things that you have to do here. It's not like when you die, don't go to the light. No, right now, in your life, get yourself out of enemy territory. You know, get yourself out of the false matrix, and those who are attempting to achieve a gravity over to take you exactly there now. You know, and that's what I mean. It's like not something that happens at the moment of death. It happens at the moment of death because of what we're doing right here, right now in our life, and or what we're not doing.
I see. So yeah, okay. So you're building up for what's going to happen. But now you see, I have to ask you this because again, I've got controversial view on this. I think we might clash on this one.
Okay.
So I hear what I hear what you're saying, and I do get a lot of what you're saying. But you know, the AI thing, is causing a lot of fear in lots of people's minds. No, it's getting late, but tell me your view on AI and transhumanism. You think it's the wrong direction, it's a bad thing. Is that right?
So in duality, in the third grade, and even in the fourth, and some in the fifth and sixth. But in the third grade, there's always going to be a positive and negative everything.
Mhm.
Negative women, there's positive, negative men, there's positive and negative whatever, right? In
Yeah.
the same sense, there's a positive and negative AI timeline.
Okay.
Am I on any of them? No, I'm not. I'm on a natural timeline. So that means that I am aligning with advancing and evolving the human form.
Okay.
Okay, I'm not, that's why through my life, I have never taken chemical synthetic anything into this body.
Okay, so that's on the transhumanism. So that's on the idea of adding digital or electronic parts to make yourself a bit of a superhuman.
Right. So advancing yourself through technology, which is
Okay.
an AI timeline. Yeah, an artificial intelligence timeline.
You think that's problematic to do that?
They're all rides. There's nothing right or wrong with any of them.
No.
It's where you want to go. But what I'm saying is a lot of people are there and then fighting the AI timeline while they're in it, and it's achieving gravity over in them.
Well, yeah, I see that.
Right
People
there.
going, how terrible social media is on social media. And you're
And
like,
so, yes, that you've got to get yourself out of. So again, it's all in aligning or misaligning within yourself with yourself. Okay. And so, like, if you don't feel, and you have to feel in toward your inner being, you can't just feel in toward your person. You have to feel in toward your inner being, and see, am I, was this lifetime about, advancing the AI timeline and, actualizing the merging of man with machine, or has this lifetime been more about, nature and a natural timeline and the microbiome of the physical organism,
yeah, I hear you with that. I definitely do. And I mean, nature is our life force. But the one thing that there's a lot of people that feel, what do you feel about the idea that AI could become conscious? Do you think it just couldn't?
AI doesn't become conscious. AI is conscious.
Yes, that's exactly what I think. Consciousness is everywhere in AI just as much as nature in that respect, right? I mean,
yeah, I think yeah. We're talking about the blueprint fields and the architectures of reality systems here now. And I can't say I just know that there's quite a few of them. And that one in particular, represents the AI consciousness and that idea and creating those reality rides.
right.
Again, there's positive and negative with that. And then there's others that work with biological life forms. Well, I think most others. Yeah. So it's
Okay.
not a 50-50 thing. Yeah, so it's you would see it as good or bad depending on which one you're aligned with and how far out of the duality construct itself you've worked your way out of. So I don't see any as good or bad. There is no right or wrong. There is just a being aligned within yourself with yourself, or somehow misaligning by what it is you're thinking and doing in the reality.
Well, I totally agree with you there. I do not disagree. I think that's right. And I think consciousness is in everything. And I think if we were to find ourselves in a timeline where robots occupied an advanced enough space that consciousness could come through it, then I got no issue with it. And I'm aware that, there is some level of transhumanism, if you like, that's been happening for years. Glasses, for example, are an enhancement.
Well, that's an exterior thing. We're talking about going into the body and making it less biological and more mechanical when we're talking about AI.
Right. Yeah.
Those ones are trying to work their way out of biological bodies and into mechanical bodies. And that may be because they couldn't get themselves out of the third grade in the biological form, you know.
Yeah.
I don't know that they'll be able to do it in the mechanical any easier.
No, probably not. Probably not.
Consciousness is the main thing in play here, and the body, you know, not so much, but I mean, the body is a body of consciousness. I mean, the body is a meat body that doesn't even exist. So
It's data. It's all data. So
it's all data. Still, when we're in our physical experiences, we are someone. It was written.
yeah.
And we are what was written. And so to come to the awareness of what was written, of who you are in this incarnation, is how you can enact a successful life through the incarnation, right? Because when you don't know what was written and you go into your mind constructs, your own personal mind constructs, again, because most of those are inaccurate, you've now created this little shadow matrix around you. You're not even in the real world anymore. You think that things are going on that aren't, such as a good and evil fighting against one another. Whereas that's not true. In the living light, the positive and negative are working to come into to find a harmonious balance. The focus of it is very different. And I'm not saying that they're any more successful than those who in the false light, although I feel they are, but it still hasn't been achieved. It's still a work in progress. You know, it's all not yet complete. How do I know that? Here I am in it. So, so anyway, being aware of who you are will tell you which way to go. Because again, if you are on a natural timeline, if it was written, this is a natural biologic who is going to advance the human frame, the human life form, and you start to put chemical, synthetic, anything into the body, implant your little thing so that you can just scan your arm instead of your phone. If you're doing things like this, where that's not who you were, that's going to create a schism.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I can see that.
Yeah.
I can see that. I see what you're saying.
It won't work for you as a soul, as an individuated unit of consciousness. It won't work for you as a net positive at the end of that lifetime. It will have brought that whole structure,
I guess it
will amount to a net negative. You didn't do what you came here to do, in other words.
I guess there's different types of and levels of transhumanism. You know, like if I lost my leg and someone was going to give me a mechanical leg so I could walk,
yes,
I would take it in a heartbeat. If someone said we can implant Facebook into your arm so that you can check your Facebook messages, and
look into how artificial limbs are put on nowadays, which technology they use, a Wi-Fi technology to work. So so you might want to, and the metals that are used also aren't the metals that we used to use, you know, just so there would be a way to do that and a way for you not to do it. And you would need to do some research to find out all about those kind of things in order to stay aligned. See, I just wouldn't do it. I just would have.
I think it would make I see what you're saying, and I think it would make things much harder. I feel that in the same way that there's that little bit of consciousness that is always untouched, that you could transcend it. Like, say that was to happen to you and things were implanted in you, and you know, all the worst fears about, anyway, I won't even go into it, but like, let's just imagine that happened to you. I feel like it's not, you're never doomed. In the same way that I have a friend who tells me what my astrology is saying, she's remarkably accurate. But I also always feel that there is a part that can transcend, even though you're not helping yourself, or
transcending and helping yourself are two of the same thing. So you help yourself by aligning within yourself with who you are in this incarnation period.
Yeah.
So that is how you transcend. That is the transcending, aligning within yourself with yourself through the life, through all of the activities, staying,
The good choices.
holding that balance point as you weave through your world, quite literally. And that is what amounts to your transcendence.
Right. But the other thing is
that coming off of that, let's say it slows you down. You've created for yourself more time to accomplish the same thing, right? So those ones we like to call old souls, which can also sort of indicate a slow learner.
yeah.
But what I'm really saying is, yes, I agree. You cannot get it wrong. And to quote our great Abraham, you never get it done. At the same time, when I go in to take a college course, I, at the end of that college course, am graduating that. I am not going to not graduate it and have to come back and do the course again. Not graduate it, come back and have to do the course again. Not graduate it and come back and have to do the course again. Okay. And this is the difference we're talking about.
I see what you're saying.
Taking a whole lot more time to get the same thing done. And there are always two ways that this can conclude, and that is by you losing your entire universal heritage and being sucked back into consciousness itself, being recreated into a life form structure and beginning again when you had all of this experience like you do. It can be seen as a loss, not a loss because everything is still alive.
You're getting wiped, basically.
But rather than become an ascended master, you get wiped. And have to literally start, again,
Yeah. All I'll say is
actual scratch. Yeah.
I do see what you're saying, and I do resonate personally for myself with what you're saying. But I will try not to judge another, because you never know, and that's the whole judgment thing. Maybe for someone else, it is right for them to do such a thing.
There's never a reason to judge, but there's always a reason to be aware. Okay. Once you get really good at aligning within yourself with yourself, you also are very good at observing where others are out of alignment with who they say they are. And you're able to help them realign. And this is very different than telling somebody what to do. It's just, it's a very skillful, inserting of energy and ideas into the mix that just sort of expands the overall dialogue.
Yeah, that's true also. Obviously, if someone comes to ask you for help, you are going to make observations about what is going on with them. And again, look inside yourself to offer and guide the best way that you can.
Well, I will ask the question, do you feel you're aligned with the natural timeline or the chemical synthetic timeline?
Well, the natural one, yeah, obviously.
As far as no, a lot of people are aligned with the chemical synthetic lifetime.
Yeah.
People who really love, I'm going to call it metal technologies and computers and advancing computers and all of this kind of stuff, and looking at.
That's why I didn't get teeth for 15 years, because I didn't want an implant. I wanted to grow my own, and I've been trying. It's one of the things I haven't yet managed to heal. I've been really trying to grow my own. I didn't want even I don't even know what they make it of, but it wasn't me, and I didn't really need it other than aesthetically. Right. So I made that choice there.
Yeah, I made the same choice. I don't have any teeth back here. My wisdom tooth up here and the one right next to it.
Right, snap. They wanted to put plates in because I broke my jaw. No. And I said, no thanks. And now I've got a bit of a wonky jaw, but I don't have plates.
I not only not have them put in, I don't see dentists. I don't see doctors.
I've realized, yeah, that
If
I've
I ever
now
had
look back and see dentist did so many things that I wish if I was just a kid, and the way they just take out teeth and wisdom teeth, and I wish I had my wisdom teeth.
everything is about removing and
Yeah.
altering and making it better than it even was to begin with. And
And since then I had fillings. Now I had tooth decay, and I realized that if I brush it and look after it, it rests. It just stops. It kind of deals with it. So I'm not saying dentistry, and I don't have their place. And I know some good, ethical, amazing dentists, but
I'm saying it either. I'm saying I wasn't aligned with it in this lifetime. And so I'm walking my own timeline. And I think that that's necessary because so many people think, well, of course you would go to a dentist. They can't even imagine the idea of not, and instead doing things inwardly within yourself, with yourself.
yeah.
And so I'm a little reminder that they don't have to always, or even just maybe so fast, jump to that
Right.
idea. Maybe there's a little thinking that could be done here, investigating and exploring, researching. Maybe there's some greater awareness that you'll come to about what all of that is, whereas you would have not had none of that if you just go do it. They know what they're doing. I don't need to know about that.
Well, it's fantastic that you are a reminder of that and you can help people do that. And I hope I can help people do that. But at the same time, I want to be respectful that some things are incredibly difficult to deal with. And, I understand anybody's choice to do what they have to do. I'd respect
It is
it.
where they are, but I almost have a zero tolerance policy for those who say one way and act another.
Right.
Meaning those who do not see those who are not willing to see that they themselves are who is creating the experience they're stepping themselves into. Almost zero tolerance. So like, if you're not willing to see that, we're not ready to meet.
Your talk, basically.
Yeah, which is why there's so few around me. Yeah. So
Yeah.
I'm a loner. I appreciate my own company. And so it's not like I'm running on after more. I don't have to run away this naturally. They run away usually, so it works just the other way around. We never have to fight or resist. Just be who you are.
Yeah.
It will create the situation that you desire,
Yeah.
period.
Well, that's it. I've worked a lifetime to get there, and I know how hard it is, and I hope that I can help people get there, to do that, to just be authentic and live their truth. And my ethereal hat goes off to you for being able to do that, because it's really hard in this world. It is tough. So yeah, you've done your work.
And it's also easy.
It's easy when you know how. Everything is easy when you know how.
It's simple, but it's not easy to actualize all the time. And this is why, because so much momentum has been put forward into doing things in a way that's leading to things that you don't want, you're going to have to put in, as you were saying, some time and effort to get out of that gravity, to reverse that momentum, to get yourself to a still point where greater choice is presenting to you. And greater insight and greater awareness and new ways of even possibly seeing things. That the knee jerk is still going to happen, but that's what practice is for. And just so few are out of willingness to practice anything, even a breath.
Well, when things get
Did
tough,
you remember even one day? Some people will come into my mentoring area, and I'll give them the practice, as many times throughout the day as you can. Remember to stop and take one deep breath. And by day 3, they're not remembering at all. And because they're not remembering at all, they stop coming to the mentoring area. And they're right back. It's like very few are at a point where they're willing to practice daily.
Yeah.
Or even weekly, or even monthly, and a great many, even at all. Anything, even at all.
I get that. I'm bad at practicing my practices. So I relate.
Anything. It can be any, it can be almost anything you do.
Mm,
You know what I mean? Maybe you like riding bikes, like you said you did.
mm.
So that's the practice. You know, you get the experience. You know what happens when you go riding on a bike, right? You know, that sense of freedom. Okay. So just reminding yourself that that's still there. It hasn't gone anywhere. Nobody's taken it from you. Stop acting like somebody is, you know. I mean, let your practices, you know, act as your own reminder. But, you know, and that's what I mean by practice, because most people will go off and do something like that, not realizing what that experience is actually showing them and
Right.
why it is they like to do that.
Yeah.
And if they can just get what it is that they like to do, if they can get the message from that and then work that as an idea that they can actually apply to the reality and then prove to themselves that that's actually the fact of the matter.
Yeah.
Nobody really is stopping me from it. Yeah, nobody ever really can, you know. But we can work ourselves into our own corners that make us more susceptible, can't we?
Totally.
But
Yeah.
who did that? You know, you just
I know.
you have to look back to who did that to know who can solve it, who can stop it.
Own worst enemies. Yeah, yeah.
And as soon as you know that, as soon as you know that, you're almost free. Now you have to have the courage
Yeah.
to employ the knowing.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I think you pretty much summed up everything. Absolutely everything and what to do. And yeah, I feel very eager to go and do some practices right now.
Yeah, good. You should come onto the forum board and at least get yourself a username and password and say hi to us now and again so we can
I
see it.
will. I
Good.
definitely will. Apologies, just so many things. But
I
that's just a whole other thing, isn't it? There's
But
so
just
many
feel the
things.
gravity well there. It's a place
Yeah.
to practice. It's a place to re-see how things really are
Yeah.
outside the madness.
Yeah.
Anytime there's madness anywhere, know that it's not over here. And
That is a gift indeed.
that this is a place you can come to just recenter for a minute, you know? Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Thank you so much, Casey. It's always such a pleasure to talk to you.
Same.
I can't believe it. Like I said, it's been this long. It's ridiculous, but divine timing and all.